We're going to make a color wheel now. So first I'm going to take my template here and I'm just using it to divide my circle into 12 equal spots. If you don't have a template like this, you can just use a ruler. There are a couple different methods that you can use, like one where you use like a protractor, and just Google how to divide a circle into 12 parts. I should be able to figure it out pretty easily. Okay. Oops, got to do the outside too. And I'm using a Sharpie pen because I want to make sure that whatever ink I use for making the outlines of my color wheel, I want to make sure that that ink is waterproof. Otherwise, when I apply my paint on, it will run and affect the color of the paint, which we don't want. Okay, so I'm just going to connect in some of these lines. Try not to drag my hand through any wet ink and make smudges. So to that end, I'm going to turn this around a little. Okay. So now we have 12 spokes on our wheel. And so I'm just going to go ahead and number these. So I've got number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Okay. And so let's see. I think I've got, I'll move this up here. I think I've got enough yellow paint still in my palette, but I'm getting enough blue for now. I'm gonna add in some more red, maybe a little bit more yellow. Okay. And I'm gonna start with my lightest color first. My swatch over here. I've got some paper towels here to the side. I'm going to make sure my brush is clean. When I get it wet and I wipe it on my paper towels, you can see that there isn't any paint being left on the towel. And so I'm going to dip a little bit of dip my brush in a little bit of water, and I'm going to fill in this number 1 spot with some yellow. A nice coat of yellow. I have to be a little bit careful here because I can see from when I was painting earlier, I wasn't careful enough and I got a little bit of red paint into my yellow paint. So I'm making sure not to pick any of that up right now. But if you're using a fresh palette, you shouldn't have that issue. But it's important that you don't contaminate your paint colors with unwanted colors in them. Only mix the colors you intend to mix. Okay, so I've got a nice coat of yellow on there in the one spot. I'll rinse out my brush really well. And now I'm going to turn my palette around. I'm going to grab some of this red. And let's see, I need to put this, pardon the noise. I'm going to need yellow, orange, 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 red, red. So this will go in the number 5 spot. So there will be 3 empty spaces in between the yellow and the red. The yellow's in the number 1 spot, the red's in the number 5. And if you're having any issues getting the paint to go on smoothly and evenly, just dip your paintbrush, just the tip of it, into a little bit of water, and that should help move your paint around a little more. Okay, so just keep putting red paint down in this spot and adding water as you need to get a nice, smooth, even coat. I'm going to put a couple of extra coats on this red, I'm going to put a couple layers down because this red is just really kind of weak. It doesn't go down super pigmented, and so I'm going to add a few layers to try and build it up a little bit more. That should do it. For this, I'm using the Liquitex Basics acrylics of 6 pieces. It's got red, blue, and yellow, green, white, and black in it. Okay, so now I'm going to rinse my brush out really well. Again, wipe it off on my paper towel, make sure it's not transferring any color over. And I'm going to move my palette around. Got a little drop of water on there. And let's see, I want red, violet, violet, blue, violet. So blue will go in the number 9 spot right here. A little touch of water. I'll get that even coverage without having to lay down like a thick layer of paint. We don't really want to do that. A little more paint. Sorry, my dog is in here with me, and he's a bulldog, so he gets very snorty and, I don't know, he's noisy, grunty and snorty, I guess. I'm going to put a couple layers down on the blue as well. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush really, really well. Okay. So now I want to mix this orange. So I am going to take my palette knife and I'm going to do this in the middle well, I think. I'm going to take some red. And then I'm going to wipe my palette knife off because I don't want to contaminate the yellow with the red paint. So now I'm going to take some yellow and try and grab some of that red that's in there while I'm at it. And I'm going to scrape that off, wipe my palette knife off again so it's clean when I need to use it. And then I'm going to use just a touch of water, and I'm going to mix this together to see what I've got. Okay, so looks pretty good to me. I'm going to do a little swatch on my thing. So when I hold it up to the red and I compare it to the yellow, it is much closer to the red instead of being directly halfway in between them. So that tells me that I want to add more yellow, so I shift it closer toward the yellow so it can be halfway in between the two. So I'm going to set my brush down, grab my palette knife, which remember I cleaned that off. I'm going to take this yellow and scrape it on there, wipe my palette knife off again. Grab just a touch more water, I'm not putting the whole brush in the water, I'm just putting like this very little tip right there into the water. So I get just enough to make it a little easier to mix. You can see that yellow just warmed it right up. All right, so put down another swatch. Yeah, I think that might be good. It might need a little, I think I'm going to do a little bit more yellow. Oops. Just a little more yellow. Okay, wipe that guy off. Touch more water. Let's see what we've got now. Yeah, that's going to be right in between the two. I like that. Okay, so now we're going to put this in the number 3 spot. And again, I'm adding just a touch of water just to help smooth the paint over the surface. You don't want it too wet, but you also don't want it so dry that the paint won't move. Touch more water. I'll get it over into these corners. And there's a little trick with painting that the paint will follow where the water is. Watercolorists use this little trick all the time where if they want the paint to go to a certain spot and not to others, they'll get the spot where they want the paint to flow wet with just plain water. And then there's no resistance to the paint. It just follows the path of where the water has already gone. But if the surrounding area is dry, the water will travel around that area unless you put a lot of water down. So it helps like in those little corners, just to, even if you don't have enough paint on your brush, to get it wet with just a little bit of water and some, a little bit of paint, and then you can go back in there and move more paint in more easily. I got a lot of yellow in my brush right now. Ooh, somehow I got some other stuff. I think I have like old dried paint in my cup that I'm like scraping loose, and I keep getting all these little, I need to switch cups. I'm gonna go get a different water cup. Okay, and I'm back with a different water dish that should work a little better. So now what I want to do is mix the yellow orange that goes in between the orange and the yellow, so yellow orange. So I'm going to take my palette knife. Remember, you want your palette knife to be clean. I'm going to scoop up some of this yellow and scrape it off into the well there. Wipe off my palette knife, get a little dip of water, and I'm going to mix some of the orange. See how I have it right here on the edge of this pile of orange? I'm going to mix some of this orange into that yellow. And see, I'm just kind of eyeballing it right now. Just adding a little bit of orange into the yellow at a time. All right, I'm gonna swatch this and see what I think. Is that halfway in between the two? Ooh, it's awfully close. I think I'm gonna go ahead and put it down and see if I'm happy with it, or I wanna add a little bit. Yeah, I think I wanna add a little bit more orange into that. So I just go back onto my palette. It's drying a little bit on me, so I'm adding some water in here. Okay, and let's see. Yeah, that's looking good. Maybe still a little bit more orange. It's drying fast on me. Okay. Okay, yeah, that looks pretty nice. So as you're painting your colors, double check that you're getting your colors somewhat close to what mine are. So you want to make sure in your number 1 you have a nice bright yellow, your number 2 you have a light orange, in the number 3 you have orange, and then the number 5 you have the straight red, and number 9 the straight blue. Okay. All right, rinse my brush off really well. And now we're going to do the number 4 section, which is going to be red orange. So for that, I have my orange over here. I'm going to take some red, and same way I did the yellow on that side, I'm going to do it on this side with the red. Add a little bit of water in there, get it nice and juicy. And let's see, I'm going to swatch on this side. I think that needs more red. I've got orange on my brush, so don't want to dip that into my red paint. Wipe off my palette knife, get just a little dip of water. And let's see how this looks now. Yeah, like that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this down. You know, I feel like this could maybe be just a little bit more red than it is. So I'm going to go ahead and scrape up a little bit more of that red. More water. Mix that up again. And just do another coat on top. Yeah, I think that helps. I don't know if it's that big of a difference between the paint or it's just the extra coat, but that's working a little better. Okay. Rinse that brush off really nicely. Okay. So then I want to put a little bit more red on my palette, because now I'm going to mix the red and the blue to make violet. which is going to go right here in our number 7 spot. Oops, palette knife. And so I'm actually just going to move this over here into the well again. All right, I've got my red and my blue there together. Let me scrape all the paint off of my palette knife as much as I can. I'll wipe it off. A little dip of water. Let's mix this up and see where we get. Okay, that's still really blue. And so we're gonna add more red. Okay, so let's swatch this. And so when I hold this in between, maybe a little bit more red. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So again, that's going to go in the number 7 spot. Okay, so see how it doesn't really look red or blue, it's right in between. Okay, and so now we're going to want to do our red violet, and so I'm going to take some more of our red. I'm going to mix it over here, wipe off my palette knife, a little dip of water. Swatch this and see how it looks. Yeah, I like that. Maybe a little more red. Okay. This is going in the number 6 spot, and this is the red violet. I feel like I probably should have gone a little bit more red on that one. I'm gonna let it dry and maybe come back to it. And hopefully I'll be able to paint over it once it's dry, because I feel like it's just a little too close to the purple or the violet. In the meantime, while that dries, we're gonna go over here to the number 8 spot, which is going to be blue violet. So we're gonna mix a little bit more blue in over here. I think I may have accidentally put too much blue in. All right, let me get this guy out of here. Yeah, I think that's probably maybe a little bit more blue. What you're aiming for is a color that is directly in between these two. You want it to fall right in between the two, so it's kind of its own color and not one or the other. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, yeah, I think that might work a little better. A little dip of water to help the paint be a little more fluid. I don't know, maybe it does need more red. Let's do some of that red over there. Yeah, I think that works. Okay, so now I'm going to try and fix this one. A little touch of water. Mix that up a little more. And let's see what we get here. It's not going over this spot, it's still a little wet, and so it's not going over that super well. Just kind of pat the paint into place there. Okay. All right, so I'm rinsing it out really well. And now we're going to mix the number 11 spot, which is going to be green. So for that, we need to have our blue. And our yellow. Make sure my palette knife is clean. And I'm gonna take some blue here. Oh, I probably should have started with the yellow. You should always start with the lightest color first, so you have less of a chance of contaminating your colors. Okay. So I've got the blue and the yellow there, little dip of water. And let's mix these guys up and see what they do. Okay, that looks like a pretty nice green there. I'm going to put that green into the number 11 spot. Okay, it's a pretty nice green. Still a lot of green on my brush, so I'm going to rinse it pretty well to get it as clean as I can. And I'm going to go and do this yellow green first before I do the blue green. So wipe off my palette knife, grab some more yellow, and there's some yellow still on there. Off a little dip of water. So let me do a little swatch of this. Yeah, I think that works. Okay, I may want a little bit more yellow in there. Okay, so now we're going to mix this blue-green. So I've got the green. There's already some more blue over here, so I think I'm just going to mix that and see what it does. A little dip of water. Let's do a little swatch to see what we're working with. I pull a little more of this over in there. Lighten it up just a little. Now let's see. About the same. So that's a hard one. So I feel like when you look at this and look in between the two, this green is so close to this and doesn't look a lot like the blue. So that tells me we need to add some more blue in. But I just feel like these pigments aren't going to work as well that way, and we'll see. Let's see what happens. This is a very blue mix of this blue-green color. So let's see what happens when I swatch it. See, it just is blue. Just makes it darker in value. It shifts it a little bit more towards the blue. I think that's as good as we're going to get with this paint. So let's put it down. It is a pretty color. It is definitely a blue-green. Yeah, it's not so bad once I brush it out a little bit. Okay, so there you have it. This is our color wheel. Sorry, get this brush rinsed off nicely. So there's our color wheel, and our primary colors go, let's see, like this, and our secondary colors go like this. Okay, so primary, primary, primary. So again, the colors that you start with, you can't mix those colors, but when you mix them, you get your secondary colors. So this is a secondary. This is a secondary, and this is a secondary. So these colors that are mixed between the secondary and the primary are called tertiary. So it's the third tier, and please pardon my handwriting. Tertiary. Okay, so there you have your color wheel.